5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to the EUVC Lowdown, the show wrapping up the week in European venture. I'm your host, Cathy White. In the headlines this week, UK-based Amadeus Capital Partners and Austria's Apex Ventures launched the Amadeus Apex Technology Fund. The collaborative fund will see 80 million euros invested into early-stage deep tech startups, predominantly in the DACH region. You might remember that in recent weeks, we've seen both the German and French governments announce funds and pledges to invest in deep tech, and other new VC funds have emerged, suggesting deep tech is one to watch this year, as is climate tech. Contrarian Ventures, a European climate tech fund, secured 25 million euros from the European Investment Fund as part of a 100 million euro target fund it is raising. Speed Invest launched a 3 million euro fund of funds program to back emerging managers. 50% of the program will be invested into funds led by women and other diverse GPs. The fund of funds is being led by Dipali Nangia, and Speed Invest also welcomes Samir Singh, founder of Breadcrumb VC and an Atomico angel, as venture partner to its marketplaces and consumer team. In wider tech news this week, Sam Bankman-Fried, the former boss of the collapsed crypto exchange FTX, has been hit with 4 new criminal charges, accusing him of conspiring to make illegal political donations and to commit bank fraud. I, for one, think we've been mispronouncing his last name, and this is an extreme example of nominative determinism. Bankman-Fried. Today marks 1 year since Russia launched its full-scale invasion on neighbouring Ukraine. Since then, tens of thousands of people have died, entire cities have been destroyed, and millions have left Ukraine. Oksana Stowe, a friend of the EUVC team and host of ESG in VC, shared recently that on March 30th, the Ukraine Support Fund Summit, organised by Google for Startups, will take place in Warsaw. She is asking for more VCs, that's you, hopefully, listener, either in person or remotely, to attend the event and connect with more startups from Ukraine. You can contact her directly on LinkedIn, that's Oksana Stowe, for more information. Today's show is dedicated to discussing where we are 1 year on, Ukrainian entrepreneurship, how to support fervor, and where VC plays a role. Joining us on today's show, we have Kateryna Hrechko, CEO of the Ukrainian Tech Ecosystem overview, Anton Avrinsky, co-founder of Liki24, Elena Mazhuha from Flyer One Ventures, Sasha Yatsenko, principal at SMOK Ventures, and of course, Andreas is here from the EUVC team. Now, my first question, because I'm curious, is actually just to ask where everyone is right now in the world. Obviously, we've heard with everything that's been happening that lots of Ukrainians have left Ukraine. So I'm curious to see, where is everyone based right now? Elena, let's just start with you.
Cyprus.
You're in Cyprus. Okay. Kateryna?
I'm in Kyiv, but I sometimes have business trips abroad. Yeah.
Okay. Sasha?
I'm in Ukraine right now. It's the western part of the country. It's like kind of a safest part in the country right now.
Yeah. Okay. And Anton?
Yeah. Right now, today, physically, I'm in Lisbon, in Portugal, but half time I'm in Kyiv, half time here in Portugal. So I'm partly there, partly here.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you all. So there's lots that I'd like to touch on today. And of course, we always have limited time because unfortunately, we can't really do a 4-hour-long podcast. But the main things that we wanted to talk to you today about were obviously everything that's happening in Ukraine, but more specifically, what this has meant in the startup ecosystem and what's happening in venture as well. Elena, before we hit record, you kindly pointed out there's one thing that you think that we should address straight off the bat pretty much, which is what makes a Ukrainian startup. So do you just want to share your thoughts that you shared with me before we hit the magic record button?
Basically, I think that for us, being Ukrainians, of course, for us, a Ukrainian startup is a startup which is founded by Ukrainians or has at least one Ukrainian co-founder and probably hires in Ukraine or used to hire in Ukraine. But for, on the international arena, it's usually not perceived as Ukrainian startup if the founder is Ukrainian, because they can be based elsewhere, like in the US or in Western Europe or in other regions too. So I I'd say that it's a pretty divisive topic probably because it's hard to identify. But we as Ukrainians try to to name every startup which was co-founded or founded by Ukrainians a Ukrainian one.
Okay, Sasha, I see nodding and smirking from you on the camera over here. You agree with the description?
Yeah, totally. Actually, we have a kind of a great research from Deal Room for the previous year when they spotted that like 90% plus of Ukrainian founders have their headquarters registered outside of Ukraine. So it's like tremendous number. In comparison, in Poland, it's quite a vice versa when 80% plus of companies are registered in the country itself. So it is the specifics of Ukraine and Ukrainian like a background that we do have. Because of that, as Lena told, that we treat those founders that they are having their entities outside of the country still Ukrainian and Ukrainian startups as well.
Now, Anton, you are our resident startup founder on here. Before I dive into lots of other questions that we have on the venture side of things as well, it would be great just to hear a little bit more how your company has been impacted over the past year. So if any story that you're happy to share with us would be great to hear.
Okay, first of all, thanks for having me here, and it's really great and pleasure to me to be here. About our company, so just a few words. We are a marketplace for healthcare products, and we are operating right now in 3 countries. It's Ukraine, it's Romania, and we started in 2022 Italy, a huge, interesting, big market. And about the influence of the war, before the war started in maybe January and February 2022, it was the greatest months of our business, of our operations. We grew every month in average for 20-30% month to month. So it's a great time before the war started. And but in the same time, we had only up to 5-7% of the share of our business outside of Ukraine before the war started. So it was like 5-7% in January, something like that. And in March 2022, we dropped our operations at maybe 70-80% in Ukraine. So it was really terrible months. Terrible time, because just for understanding, more than 80% of pharmacies during first weeks of the war was closed. So, and the biggest problem in Ukraine was that the people tried to find any open pharmacy just to buy necessary medications. And we stopped thinking about the business. We just started to thinking how to help people, and we created a lot of things. We created the map of open pharmacies. We started delivering medications for free and so on and so on. So we changed like our focus to that, and in the same time we moved our team and our people from Kiev to western part of Ukraine, and we created a few logistics and everything that I'm talking about is in days. So just a few days ago, I analyzed my Facebook page at February 24, February 25, and so on. So every day we did so many things. It's like previously we did in months. So it changes. And in the middle of March, we started 3 new logistics centers in Khmelnytsky city. We rebuilt our operations. We moved all our team. At the moment of maybe middle of March 2022, we helped the time for more than 2 million Ukrainians to get information, to get medications and so on. So it's like for some part of that time, I like our status and our feelings in the time, because we were super focused on the result and think only about the result. So it's real business, real operations, and real things which was done. We dropped in the March, then we came back, and just for understanding, we finished 2022 with growing more than 50% of our revenue in total. And as I told, we started as 5-7% of our share in European Union before the war, and right now we have more than 30%, 30, in the beginning of 2023. So and in the same time, we did a lot of like charity projects and so on. we'll have time, I'll talk about that. So this year was like year of huge changes and huge progress, and of course, in a lot of difficulties that we faced with.
And in terms of your reaction to everything that was happening, right, and quick decisions, the pace at which you're suddenly creating new tools and solutions to help the people around you, is this something that you saw across the board? I'm just thinking in terms of the rest of 22 heading to where we are in 23. Is this something that is a recurring theme across startups from Ukraine, or have you seen it's kind of, has it divided? Are there those that have disappeared quite quickly and those that have continued? What does the wider landscape look like, I guess, is my question to you, and actually to Sasha and Elena and Kateryna as well. Happy for everyone to come in on this. I know nothing about the Ukraine landscape. That's my top line header. So anything you can tell me, please do.
Just a few words from my side, and I think Sasha and Lena knows much better, because they are see more companies. I see only companies that is close to me, but I see huge resilience from Ukrainian companies to everything that is going on the street and in the country. And of course, it's great that we have a lot of maybe 80% of Ukrainian companies has the biggest part of their operations and their business outside of the country. So it's for them, the influence of the internal market is much lower than, for example, we had before. Yeah, so it's for them, and they have an external revenue streams in USD or euro. So the influence of that for their business is much less than, for example, we had before. But in the same time, I see that a lot of maybe almost all of them really make quick changes, make some pivots, and maybe almost all of them are alive. So it's great resilience, and it's like the same bravery that all Ukrainians have right now. So it's important to understand that. And it's not about just words. I told you real examples about our company and about the numbers. Plus 50% in revenue in 2022, when we had before 93% in Ukraine. Yeah. So it's about the resilience.
Yeah. Elena, Sasha, you can fight over who wants to go first, but tell me more. What are you seeing in the ecosystem?
So in our portfolio, there are 15 companies founded by Ukrainians with Ukrainian teams mostly, and we see that they, of course, experienced huge problems in the very beginning of the escalation and full-scale war. Because some of them lost a huge chunk of revenues. I think there were a couple of companies with a huge share of Ukrainian revenues, which lost a lot in revenues during the first 2 months, probably in March, April, maybe a part of May. But after that, their revenues rebounded, and they were very quick to act. In most of the cases, they relocated the majority of their people somewhere. They streamlined their business, maybe even entered some new markets. They cut costs, and there is no Ukrainian company in our portfolio which was closed, which is kind of amazing, because at the very beginning we expected it to be entirely different situation. And among the startups that we are talking to and that we didn't invest in, so I think that the companies which closed at the very beginning of the full-scale war were the companies which were at extremely early stages, no external funding at all, no revenues, maybe underdeveloped products, but those which were kind of established, like approaching Series A stage, having investors who support them, having large teams and revenues and even profits in some cases. I think that the majority of them survived and even thrived by the end of 22.
I totally agree with Lena, because all the cases I see when we are talking about seed plus startups, they are all alive, more even. They are all continuing their development, and sometimes their growth is can be tenfold, for instance, despite the fact that they're having, for instance, 50% plus of their teams in Ukraine, in the country where we have war. So it's again about no matter what, we continue develop our ecosystem, our ventures in general. So again, it's about the resilience, it's about the being hunger to development in general, and it's in positive way. It's about Ukrainians, it's about that bravery that we are talking about today and around the Ukrainian case in general. So I totally agree that Ukrainian startups didn't close through the year. They struggled. Definitely they struggled, but it was not the reason to close, to fire teams, and most of them, even the idea stage and pre-seed stage startups, continue running and looking for their new challenges.
And if I may, I would like to add a little bit on economic viewpoint, the reflection which Ukrainian tech had onto Ukrainian economy. So Ukrainian tech has put into our economy 7.34 billion USD. So figures speak for themselves. Now we are conducting a huge update of our platform, of the data on Ukrainian tech, product companies, service companies, and other constituents of Ukrainian tech. And we see certain developments and incentives, for example, military tech, and this talent and idea development has, it's flourishing. And there are more and more product companies now. Service companies have gotten less a little bit. So there are a lot of positive and curious trends.
Kateryna, while I have you, I actually think it would be beneficial for our listeners also to just understand the company you're COO of. Why do you exist now? What are you trying to achieve, and how could listeners of the podcast potentially get involved?
So our NGO is called Ukrainian Tech Ecosystem, and it's a union of tech companies in Ukraine. Among them, there is Sigma Software, which is probably known to your listeners, and Genesis, Rise Capital, and some other companies. So first of all, the platform is our flagship project. So 2 years ago, bright minds of Ukrainian tech, including Sasha Yatsenko, by the way, have gathered together and said, okay, what do we know about Ukrainian tech? How can we estimate what's happening there? So they decided to collect the data on Ukrainian companies to see what it is. And they were amazed when 2 years ago, even 2.5 years ago now, they saw that, for example, Ukraine had more startups than Estonia, even though Estonian ecosystem has been invested into and has had a lot of incentives from the state. So we are now feeding this information to many stakeholders, including state authorities. We are supported by the Ministry of Digital Transformation, which is very well known in Ukraine, Ministry of Economy, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, so that we are creating this one voice tech messaging. And actually we will have our public official launch into information domain in the end of March, and we will be happy to share more news with you. But I would say that we are first of all advocating product companies and their development in Ukraine. Of course, it's very tightly connected with interaction with the state, business and the state, and some legal developments for Ukrainian founders to be motivated to incorporate their companies, to pay taxes, and to feel protected and needed in Ukraine. Because when we win the war, and we will win the war, we will have to boost our economy. It has to be like a quantum leap, not just renovation. It's quantum leap, and that's what we're here for. Uniting our effort.
Fantastic. Right. Well, I look forward to seeing that data, and you'll definitely have to ship it over to us to have a look at for the lowdown. I'm going to switch focus, because obviously we've talked a bit about startup side of the ecosystem and everything. I think now it's time to talk about VCs. Now, we were talking about this before we hit record, so spoilers to the listeners at home. But last year, a lot of VCs made a lot of promises about backing Ukrainian startups. What have you actually seen? And I'll throw that out there for anyone who wants to jump on it and start answering. But what is your experience of that been? Do the claims and the well wishes match up with reality?
We can start here, actually. Just about a couple words about my background before joining SMOK Ventures as a principal. As I started just in the beginning of this year in SMOK, before that, and still I am a managing partner of Rise Capital. It's a natively Ukrainian family office. We started our operations like 3 years ago with the first investments and venture building into mostly Ukrainian teams. And when we are talking about the period of 2022 in general, I can say that though we are having like a pretty small portfolio of 10 companies, like all of them, venture ones, closed or closing right now their next rounds. So despite the situation in country, as Lena already mentioned, that those teams that are having on board right investors in general, and being on the a bit more mature stages like a seed and Series A stages, they are continue running and feeling themselves well. And in terms when we're talking about VCs, about their eye on the market, the problem is, and it was even before 2022 February, not too much European VCs and global VCs know a lot about Ukrainian tech scene in general. And it is nowadays it's a case of SMOK ventures as well, because when SMOK started to look precisely into the Ukrainian ecosystem, there is a numerous amount of teams that are like on the same level or even on the higher level in comparison with other teams in the region. And when we are talking about Europe in general, we are definitely, I mean, Ukrainian founders are definitely not worst ones. At least they are ready to skyrocket with technologies. You know that Ukraine has a great tech pool in general, talent pool, I mean, and it's about like background and the ground in general for like again having more and more unicorns. As for instance, Ukraine has these days like 7-8 unicorns, including Grammarly, including People AI, and a number of other great teams. And getting back to investments, previous year was not the top year for a number of deals. We felt the kind of a drop in terms of those deals. But when we are talking about 2023 and a number of announcements from fund managers that we had in the second part of 2022, again, they will become a real ones in terms of investments in 2023. And from my side, for instance, just yesterday, there was like one more news from French ecosystem that they are ready to invest extra money into Ukrainian startups. We had a like announcement like a month ago about like 50 million fund from French investors as well that will be like invested into Ukrainian founders. SMOK Ventures like stated that we will invest in Ukraine as one of the core markets in CE region. So at least one third of the fund will be invested into Ukrainian teams, and it's about like tens and hundreds of millions of euros and dollars that will be invested in the local founders like in the next few years. So it's a good news for Ukrainian entrepreneurs in general, and definitely I'm sure it's a great opportunity for VCs, not just only from the region as SMOK is, and for instance Wire One Ventures, we are mostly investing into CE founders, but for all the VCs around the globe. Again, like take an eye onto the market and you'll see that there is a great founders to invest in.
We also touched on this, and I want to bring it up quickly before switching back to the ecosystem. But obviously, you know, okay, if say I'm a VC and I've decided I do want to look at Ukraine for the first time, the risk right now, you know, what would you say thinking about the risk?
Well, a lot of our portfolio companies started fundraising or are planning to fundraise in 2023, and especially those which were founded by Ukrainians. And in sometimes, like if they talk to VCs from let's say CE region, Baltic countries, Nordic countries, those countries are super supportive of Ukrainian founders, and they often do not perceive the whole, you know, the whole situation and the whole risk as hardly as, for example, US VCs. US VCs and maybe Western European VCs are more cautious, I would say. They are afraid that, you know, the founder will be mobilized, that, I don't know, that team members will be hurt during some rocket attack, that somebody else would happen, like electricity will disappear, or you know, it will be uncomfortable and inefficient to work with them, or they will like lose some communication, means of communication. So you know, and I think that it's of course logical. Like VC business is already a very risky kind of business, and you are trying to avoid other, you know, external risks which may help you lose money, you know, eventually. So I think that it's of course like something that we could expect in the very beginning, and we are trying to be realistic about this and trying to network among the VCs which are very highly supportive of Ukrainian founders and Ukrainian teams, and not like wasting time on those who are not supportive at all or they're just scared. But we are also trying to educate some VCs with whom we talk about the, you know, the severity of this risk, and that if the founder is relocated already, if the team is relocated already, that it's not like a purely Ukrainian company subject to the risks of, you know, of the war and rocket attacks and other things like that. So I would say that it's super relative. Like it highly depends on where the founders are based, where the team is based, where the business sells the product or service. So I'd say that it's better to look in depth to understand what's the situation with the company.
I'm conscious, obviously, we've spent time talking about what's happened over the past year and a few insights into what we could see maybe happening on the venture capital side as we're bringing, moving further and further into 2023. But given where you are right now, and for each of you individually, however you want to answer this, what would you like to see happen this year, aside from winning the war and Putin's head on a stick or something? But what do you want to see this year when it comes to external support, internationally within the startup and VC ecosystem, or in terms of your own plans, for navigating the year ahead?
Well, probably I would like to start with saying what has changed in Ukraine's voice and support and perception by the world. So first of all, of course, we have proven that we're brave, resilient, and on both fronts, economic and military. And I would say that the doors which have been closed for us are now open. For example, I was involved in an organization of Ukraine House Davos in May 2022, and Ukrainian Tech has already, had its righteous place there. Our partners have organized and brought a delegation to Collision in Canada. It's, a very fast developing event. Then we organized a governmental and startup delegation to TechCrunch, which has been a dream. We have been dreaming about that before, but now we're getting some discounts, some offers which were just a dream before. And we saw a huge, we see that the world wants Ukrainian founders. And of course, first of all, people come up to us, touch, ask, are you crazy? Are you alive? And then, of course, they ask about risks, where are the teams, what are the ideas? But I would say that there is many positive trends. Last year, we had Web Summit, and Ukrainian, stand was huge. Everybody was interested. We had crowds, we had First Lady, Minister of Digital Transformation. I mean, a lot of companies, and it's huge. I have never seen that before. This year, our plans are also rather interesting and tasty. So right now our colleague is bringing Ukrainian delegation to Barcelona Tech. Then we plan to organize a delegation with Ukrainian startups to Washington in May. Then London Tech Week comes after that. TechCrunch is also there in fall. So we're as active as never before, and we want to show the world what Ukraine has in store.
I'll see how I can help in the Spanish ecosystem, which I'm based in Barcelona. The accent doesn't give that away. Sasha, turning to you, thinking about the year ahead and changes you'd maybe like to see, is there anything that you want to share on the podcast?
It's about those bridges actually that Kateryna in a way mentioned. It's not just about conferences, it's general about having those two-side ways between countries, and to continue running and establishing those connections between different ecosystems. So Ukrainian one is really need that, because we are pretty green one, in terms of maturity. So it's important for us to have those connections, to have that experience that our European tech scene having already. And those conferences, for instance, it's a good chance to meet Ukrainian stakeholders and to talk with them, share some ideas with them, and share some opportunities with them. So my kind of a message to European colleagues, European stakeholders of VC scene, of startup scene, just when you see the Ukrainian kind of a stakeholder, just reach them out and talk about them, how you can be in a cooperative way, having some kind of a business, having some kind of investment, etc., etc. So it's really important. And it's not just kind of being pity to Ukraine and Ukrainians in general. It's about just do business with us. We are ready to make it, and we know how to do it. So we just need partners in that stuff, and it's all about that. So we are ready to earn money. We are ready to make the deals, and it's about that.
Yeah, I want here to add few words to Sasha. You asking what is the expectation for 2023? From my side, first, of course, expectation is to win the war, and we will definitely do it. And the second expectation, it's about the deals. So just one word, deals. Business deals, some investments and so on. Because 2022 and the second part of 2022, we saw a lot of announcements, a lot of funds raised, especially for Ukraine, and so on, so on. But we see more deals and more like, of course, we know total situation in the whole world, economic situation and so on, but we see that mostly the funds that was active, like Flyer1 Venture, like TA Ventures, like another funds from our region was still active and they supported. And thanks for you, for Flyer1, for other teams who are supporting Ukrainian companies. But we are waiting, and we really believe that announcement that was made in 2022, they will start going to the deals. So this is the huge expectation of this year.
Just a full disclosure, Leaky24 is our portfolio company. So
I really could not tell.
Yeah, and Flyer1 Venture is one of our greatest partner, and do a lot of support for us. Not only funds, but a lot of support in doing the business. And last one, just last words from my side about a lot of partners. It's not only about the investors, but about the business partners and so on. They are waiting, and some of them, it's really funny, but they just write me, we will do this 1, 2, 3 after the war finished, when you will win the war. It's, of course, it's great to hear it, or when the Ukraine will be like the part of European Union. It's also, we really believe that it will be this year or maximum next year. But my proposal and my expectation, not to start waiting. The word wait in our company, we cancel this word. I don't use the word wait. Yeah, because we haven't waited nothing. We just have to go and to achieve what we plan. So this is my proposal to everyone and to every potential partner, venture investor, and everybody, not to wait, but to do.
Ukrainians now, we know the value of today better than anybody else. And, to support Sasha and what he said, Ukrainians are not only ready to and know how to make money, but with our tech and talent, we know and want to make the world a safer, cleaner, greener, and a better place. And we would like the world to, support us in that. That's the main message I have.
I think that's a lovely message for us to end the podcast on. So thank you all very much for joining the Lowdown today. I found it incredibly insightful. And for all of you, or 2 of you currently in Ukraine, stay safe. And I'm sending love to all of you. This has been wonderful. Thank you very much. We'll all do hearts on our screens. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. So that's it for this week's episode, team. So check out the newsletter over on EU.VC and follow the European VC on LinkedIn, where we will continue the conversation. My one thing I would say to anyone who listens today or over the next week, if you see anything fucking cool coming out of Ukraine, there is so much wonderful content today, the really amazing stories coming through. Obviously there is the sadness and everything there as well, but celebrate the people that are doing amazing things and just spread the word as wide as you can. And until next week, have a good one.